Welcome to the Restore Yourself podcast. I am your host, Timothy Waterman, metaphysical teacher, divine channel of universal wisdom, and personal breakthrough guide. I'm so happy to have you here listening to this episode. And today I have yet another empowering, fantastic, dynamic conversation with my featured guest by the name of Sheila Williams. And Sheila is a self-proclaimed magic coach. I'll get more into her official bio a little bit later in the introduction here. But first and foremost, I just have to say I've listened to this conversation twice now, and it's just holy cow. I mean, Sheila and I both do very empowering work, helping people have breakthroughs and just realize the power they have as conscious creators to summon and co-create and consciously design the reality of their choosing, the reality they prefer. And so this conversation to me just really has so many incredible, enlightening nuggets just exactly about that. Like, we can choose how we want to create our lives. We can let it be natural. We can let it be in flow. We can let life surprise us. We can let it be better than we can even imagine. And we can let it be a lot simpler than it's ever been, if you ask me. And that's a lot of what this conversation has to do with. So if any of those notes that I just spoke to speak to you, well, I have a feeling this conversation is for you, and you're very much in the right place at the right time. So I'm excited for you to get to listen. I know I'll listen again because it's just that kind of a conversation, one that I'll want to revisit again and again. And it was also just really fun, lighthearted, empowering, but still lighthearted and fun, and just a really good time. So with that, I will read Sheila's bio here. So Sheila Williams is a self-proclaimed magic coach who is a teacher to the core of her being. She discovered how to find joy in life and has created a magical life of travel, exploration, and connection. She believes that we have the power within us to create any life we choose through consistently making choices that feel aligned with what we desire. She is a proud Canadian, a mother to 3 grown miracles, and a lover of nature and the outdoors. Traveling the world as a pet sitter and spending time with animals is the cherry on the top of her Sunday life. Playing with others as they discover their own life of magic is one of her favorite pastimes, and she is passionate about her clients and group coaching programs. So, if after hearing this interview, you would like to connect with Sheila, just know that you will find her Linktree link in the show notes. If you're new to the podcast, in the show notes, I always include a brief description of the episode. Beneath the description, I include my guest's bio, the bio that they give me for the interview. And then underneath the bio, there's always their most relevant links. And in today's case, again, it's a link tree for Sheila, and you'll find it right below her bio. I took a look at Sheila's link tree, so if you hear this interview and you just want to know more about her services, her offerings, any specials she may have going on, I just took a look at her link tree and I saw all of the above on her link tree. So it's definitely an easy way for you to find out more if you'd like to connect with her beyond this podcast. Well, having brought those announcements forth, I feel that the next best thing is to play this interview with Sheila Williams. As always, it is my intention that you find value in this. I hope that you find value in this and enjoy. And without further ado, here is the interview, the conversation that I have with Sheila Williams. Welcome to the podcast, Sheila. I'm so excited. This is, whoever's listening, you're going to hear the audio, but I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Sheila. She has just the biggest smile and twinkle in her eyes. And I have a lot of love for Sheila. We just, we had a number of different kinds of online experiences together, and now we get to do this. So what a pleasure. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Yes, I have listened to the other episodes and they've been fantastic. And I was lightly feeling into, wouldn't it be fun if we could do one together? And then you approached me and I said, that's perfect. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, these conversations are so fun because they're expansive. They're expansive. I mean, we're playing in the realm of infinite possibilities, and and we've talked quite a bit about the lifestyle that you've created for yourself. And I know I've had a lot of fun, and I know we'll get into it more, but just for a jumping off point, I've had a lot of fun watching your photos on Facebook because you're like the definition of a globetrotter. So
Yes, and how much fun is that? Because and we can talk about it more detail because I never would have considered that that would have been part of my reality. Never, ever, ever, ever. And it's a great reminder for me that why would we limit ourselves to things that we, consider possible? We could have anything. And when you allow that, it does happen and it shows up. And if that gives anybody else a smile or some inspiration to reach outside the box a bit more, then that's even more exciting.
yeah, I mean it's visible, and this is again, I know we have a lot of context for this because we've both studied similar teachings, similar channel teachings, and one of the phrases that we hear a lot is being an example of possibility. And
Yeah.
to me, that's you really are the way that you just document your life. It's just this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is how I
Yeah.
live. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people watching going like, wow, like that looks like a pretty, for those who enjoy travel and those who enjoy seeing new sights and tasting all the variety out there. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching going like, wow, I mean, she's doing it, so maybe I could do it.
I do hear that from people, and that's a lot of fun for me because you don't need to even want what I'm doing, but the idea of I could have what I want, I think that's a lot of fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, that's one of the things that's because I've done a bit of traveling, more so around the US, the States. Well, actually, I mean, I mean, other than going to Canada, which is next door. And then I did fly across the Pacific to Hawaii. So, but just seeing what I've seen, it's very clear to me that there's a whole lot to see. And the more that I've seen, the more I want to see. I mean, has that been similar for you? Because I know you've seen a lot at this point.
It absolutely has been exactly what I experienced. And I mean, I won't take credit for the world at this point. It's out there and it's ready for me, but mainly around Europe as well as North America have been my areas of focus in the last few years. And the ideas have started to, those seeds have been sown to go further afield. And even part of what I love about that is that I'm not planning it. I'm not being strategic. I'm just letting it flow. And so even a few months ago, I was on a train. I had been in France for 5 weeks and I was on my way back to England, took the ferry, hopped on a train to travel to where I was going, and just happened to strike up a conversation with a woman beside me. And she was a corporate trainer, very similar to what my old position was. And she was from Singapore. Now, I normally don't talk to people on trains. I'm actually really introverted and I tend to just stick to myself, but it felt like a really easy conversation to have. And we ended up talking the entire time. It was so much fun. And by the end of it, we were connected on LinkedIn and making, I was finding out what time of year is best to come to Singapore because she was like, come, like, I can show you things and people would love your coaching there. And like, you can come and, just explore our culture and the sites. And it was a lot of fun to just put those ideas. Again, I think of them as seeds and just releasing them to the wind. Don't need to make anything happen. But yeah, I often will stay for free by doing pet sitting. And while we're on the train, I was on the site. And yeah, there were absolutely pet sits available in Singapore. So it brings up that, well, why not? Like, why not do it? Why not go? I've never been there. Why not? So to live like that instead of planning things out all the time has been a huge shift for me. And it's allowed me to experience so much more than I ever did when I thought I had to plan it all out.
I love that. I love that. To me, the way it comes across is that you take a few steps, not really knowing where that's going to lead you. But by taking those few steps, you're in new territory, new scenery, new circumstances. And then from that point, you're like, oh, okay, well, let's see what wants to open up from here. And
Mhm.
you're open, rather
Yeah.
than again having like a very narrow focus. You're like, okay, well, now, I went to this city. I'm not quite sure what's next, but I'm here. I'll play. I'll see what happens in my life with this open perspective. And then opportunities present themselves and you're kind of like, oh, well, that one sounds good.
Yes, that is exactly it, 100%. And when I tell people, they say, oh, well, where are you now and how long are you there? And I tell them I really only plan out ahead about 3 weeks, maybe as far as 6. And that's a little icky for them. Like they're a little, oh, I don't know, that feels really insecure. How can you live like that? Don't you worry you won't have anywhere to sleep or anything? And no, none of that crosses my mind. I feel how I'm basically like just creating more space for something really fun to drop in. And it does every time. And in fact, the few times that I have planned ahead a little bit more, because I let my old mind get in there, like I probably should plan something, I probably should secure something. It hasn't worked out. Not easily, for sure. Maybe it's been canceled or something really good came in instead. And I thought, oh, I I love knowing that allowing that space to stay open allows these things to flow, because it was flowing to me. I just didn't know. I got a little nervous and tried to lock things in. And it's just that reminder, a nice soft reminder of feel into how good it feels to be loose about this. Feel into just this easy going flowing. There's just so much flow available to us. And I'm a very practical person. And of course, I want to know where I'm going to be sleeping. And yet I now have this new perspective that we can feel into the openness and the expansiveness of what is available. And without trying to pinpoint, it has to be this thing or that thing. I just know I want to feel good. I know I want to feel safe. I want to feel curious. I want to explore areas. I do enjoy meeting people. I'm just throwing out there that those are my expectations. Animals. I love animals. I want to meet really fun, characterful animals. That's what's on the list. And then I just let whatever flows to me flow. And that's where the richness of it has really been coming.
And what's coming to me in this moment as I'm hearing you describe this is that, and what I love about this is that, because, yeah, I mean, I feel a lot of people, I have a feeling a lot of people could relate. There's this notion of whether it's going on vacation or taking a big trip. Not everyone, but I've had a lot of conversations in my life, and I would say, yeah, more typically, a lot of people tend to plan, like, I know what I'm doing while I'm there. I'm going to do this day, that day. And what really stood out to me, and again, not everyone, I have talked to other people that are like, I just go there and I kind of just explore. I have talked to people like that too, as well. And that's more of what I'm like these days, is let me just show up and start to plan, explore. But what was standing out to me as you were just describing that was, I mean, this is a whole new space in the world. Like, you really have no idea. So rather than research all these options and try and pin it down, you go there and you're like, well, I don't know. There's a lot of options. So let's just see what happens. Let's just keep it open and more just, less rigid. And by doing that, because you are open and available, these experiences, these opportunities do find you, and you're like, it's like, but if you were so focused and rigid on like, I know exactly what I'm doing each day, like each part of the day, and you're very focused on that, then there's not that openness because again, it's a whole new setup, a whole new scenario. And again, ahead of time, we could never know what all the possibilities are, because we really haven't been there before. And so with your openness, you allow the possibilities to present themselves, because you're there, you're open, you're available to play. And then you just like, you use your intuition. Okay, this one sounds good.
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons that I think has made the impact is the awareness of my sense of lack. Because I used to let my whole life be run by not enough time, not enough money, not enough resources of any kind. No, this will be the only time I can do this. I remember my first trip to Europe. That's exactly how I felt. I felt so shocked that I was even going to Europe. This was amazing. And that it represented a big jump for me to commit to it, to book it. I was actually going on an Abraham Hicks cruise. So I had a bit of security that I was going with, I knew some people, I had a roommate booked. So it felt good, but also felt very open, wide open in the way of just, oh my gosh, I don't know what to expect. What about the languages? What about the money? What about jet lag? Everyone talks about jet lag. I was scared of flying. I was going to fly across an ocean, and I was terrified of flying across the ocean because what if the plane crashed? That was my mentality at the time, even though at that point I was feeling so much more aware of possibilities than ever before. I was still really tightly tied to these types of ideas that would run through my head all the time. And I mean, I love it now looking back. I have such compassion for, Sheila from 2018. She was on a journey and she was doing really well, but I'm happier to look back 5 years in the future and say, look, we did it. We were okay. But that trip to Europe, I thought, this will probably be the only time I ever go to Europe. I need to make sure to take every ship excursion. I need to go see all the sites. I'll never be in France again. It was so active within me, and it was exhausting because, of course, I would go take those day-long excursions every day that we were, parked somewhere. I was basically up at 6 a.m. going. And that was such a great reminder for me. It was a lesson. I saw beautiful things, but it didn't feel fun by the end of it. It was like, really, do we have to get on that big bus again and drive for a few hours just to walk around and listen to people tell me statistics I'm never going to remember about this history? Couldn't I just go enjoy and look around? So that was a great, awakening moment for me of let go of the need to control it, let go of the idea of lack. And you know what? I've been to many European cities many times now, and knowing that I can go back again, they're not going anywhere. If I feel like staying inside and doing my laundry one day and I happen to be in Rome, I haven't lost anything. I don't need to spend all of my time, learning about Rome's history and of going to appreciate the art. I can do that, and I don't have to, because I can let go of that idea that I have to hold tightly to it because it might never come again.
Yeah, that one really lands too. I want to get in a little bit I'd like to invite you to speak to a little bit about how, because we know where you are, we know your mindset now, your approach to life now. I'd love to just talk a little bit of the background that got you here. But before I invite you to share on that, I just want to also emphasize what you just said, because last year when I was in Kauai, it was the same thing. It felt like it was time for it to come to a close. And there was this, it felt like a lack of time in a way. And it was, I think, the day before my last day, and a friend of mine took me up to, I believe, the northern part of the island, and the ocean up there. It was really, really pretty. And we were up there, and that's exactly what I heard from the island of Kauai. The island said to me, I'm not going anywhere. I was just like, wow. I mean, I've been in this whole trying to figure it out, and is this really the time to close this chapter? And then the island just spoke to me clearly. It was like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yes, we need a nudge sometimes to remind us.
Yeah. So I love that you found that in your own experience as well. Is that don't put these limitations around it. It's like, and no need to push ourselves, because if we're traveling and we're doing a bunch of things, the rest is so vital, because otherwise it's not going to be as enjoyable if we're trying to do so much more when we're exhausted. So very, very beautiful points. And yeah, I would just love to, just for the sake of the listeners. I mean, I really haven't heard too much about your journey to this expansive state that you find yourself in now, this very open mindset and approach to the world. I mean, I know some of the teachers that you've listened to, but I really don't know too much of the backstory. So just I'm curious, and then I'm sure our listeners might be curious as well if you're open to sharing.
I am always open to sharing. I think we have so much to learn from each other. And I I said I am an introvert, but I do love connecting with people. And I can share that I am Canadian. So I grew up in northern Canada in smaller Native communities, but then started to move further progressively south and became a teacher when I went to university. I'd always known I wanted to be a teacher as far back as I can remember. Writing on the walls with chalk, my parents let me do that. I, pretend to pass out all the sheet. Well, I would pass out the sheets to all my pretend students. Like that was everything for me, is I wanted to be a teacher. And I ended up getting married quite early to my high school sweetheart. I had 3 children. And so I basically had the life that I always expected to have. I had a house, I had a mortgage, a minivan, kids, husband, career. And it felt as if things were okay, but there was always some disconnect. And so you fast forward a few years and things tend to take a life of their own when I had no idea that you could consciously create anything. I wasn't aware of it. Of course, I had been creating all kinds of things and I had a lot of beauty and love in my life, but I always did feel as if I had to react to things that were happening to me. And so what happens, I've learned, is that you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. That's a classic Abraham thing. And so I was finding that my mindset was always focused on, as I said, the lack, not enough money, not enough time, not enough help around the house, not enough support for my kids through the school, like whatever it was, it doesn't matter, because my brain was so focused on those things in the moment. I never had any perspective. And I was busy, but I just kept doing more. And that, of course, doesn't lead to a very happy life. It leads to quite a burnt out life. I was very angry and resentful about things all the time. It's again, kind of crazy to look back and think, but you know what? That Sheila was just doing the best she could with the tools she had, and everything was fine. She was okay. And yet she wasn't really feeling a really happy life, for sure. So fast forward to 2016, two of my children are out of the house. I've got a 16-year-old as the last one. At that point, I am divorced. I've moved my career from being a school teacher to being a corporate trainer. And there's a lot of good, like a lot of good. I have had a blessed life that I appreciate very much. Unfortunately for me, or as it turns out, fortunately, the relationship I was in at the time ended very abruptly, to my surprise. Now, I wasn't 100% happy in that relationship, but I did what your brain does at that time. It's like, it's okay. It's getting better. There were some issues with small children. They're growing up, they're maturing, they're learning. And so I thought, you know what, we're okay. We're making plans. We've got the 30-year relationship. We're good. And apparently it wasn't good. And of course you look back and you think, okay, I did know that. But at the moment, I felt as if I didn't. And that did lead someone to send me a clip of Abraham Hicks. And so if anyone isn't familiar with Abraham, you can go on YouTube. 15-minute clips are available. And Abraham is basically channeled through Esther Hicks. And it was my first experience with someone openly channeling. I didn't even know if I believed in it, but I knew that everything that I heard made perfect sense and I felt better. So that was the place to start. And I did start listening a lot. It's very common when people have that type of experience, because I felt so much better. So I listened more. I did start going on the cruises and connecting with people who are in that community. And that helped me to start make those baby steps to being aware that we can create our own reality. And that was huge news to me. I just didn't know. I thought things happen to you, you react, you work hard your whole life. Maybe you're lucky and you get to retire, you take a vacation or two and you die. That seemed like it was going to be a really fulfilling life, because that's what I saw around me. And I am excited that I learned about something different. And of course, through the course of learning and expanding your awareness and your willingness to listen to more and be open to more, of course, more teachers do come in. When you're ready, the teacher appears, right? And so Sarah Landon, Bashar, there's so many amazing teachers who I have listened to, and people in the community. The Sarah Landon has a great community of people, which is how we met. It's where I've met a lot of other great people who are in my life. And it's that connection, the conversation where you can even challenge each other. Someone can be really passionate and explain, and someone says, well, I don't know about that. Like, have you ever thought about it this way? And I love that we can help each other just see reality as it exists for us from these different angles, because I think that's where the play comes in. We're all looking at everything from a slightly different angle, and that's what creates this awesome world that we're living in. We don't have to be the same. We all get to be part of a whole, and yet slightly different.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool for me to hear, because again, I haven't really heard so much of the background, other than I know that you mentioned that you had studied Abraham Hicks' teachings for a while. And then one thing I couldn't quite tell, so just for clarity for me, and then that may help for anyone who's listening. So when you said that you were in a relationship that ended, was that the marriage, or was that another relationship after the marriage?
That was another one. Yes. I had my first marriage ended when the children were quite young. So I was a single parent for quite a few years, which really helped to solidify that position of lack that I talked about. We always had enough. We had everything we needed and more. And yet I was convinced that I didn't have enough of anything ever. So I had thought I'd gotten to a much more balanced place. And I was in this new relationship, and, blended families, bought a new home, all of that good thing. Okay, this time I got it right. And then unfortunately, there was the revelation to me of, actually, no, this isn't going to work out. And so it was a great wake-up call, no matter what. At the time, it felt devastating. I didn't see what could possibly be there for me to my benefit. And within 6 months, for sure, I was already looking at it as the best thing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. So I appreciated the opportunity to have that experience after the fact.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of what I was sensing. I was like, oh, this sounds like it was a second relationship, the way you described it, but I wasn't quite sure. And so for my own curiosity, I asked, and now I'm sure anyone who's listening now, they understand, because I know you had mentioned that some of the details why that second relationship didn't work, and now that you've given a few more details, I'm like, oh, okay, now I feel like I'm piecing it together. So and I also, what stood out to me is you had mentioned that the brain does what it does. It's like, well, am I happy? I don't know if I'm happy, but it's okay, it seems to be fine, which I totally get, because I've been in those situations. Not the same, obviously, but I've had that mindset in my life before. Like, well, I'm not really happy, but there's probably not anything better out there. It's like talking myself into staying. And so because again, it is that limiting, it's that assumption that nothing better is out there. That's what it was for me. So I can relate to that not really being happy, but well, I mean, I guess it's fine. But then, and you can tell me if this is your experience, when I finally did move on, then through my life experience, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that's out here.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, how I was processing it at the time was, there are good times, there are moments that feel really good. And you kind of hold on to those moments, and you string them together, and you think, this is a good life. Honestly, for me, I don't, the fact that and obviously through my whole life, there were probably times when I had moments of learning, but what always stands out in my memory is after I had the children. And when you are in that type of situation, you feel as if you don't have a lot of choices. Choices that feel good and easy when you're considering, well, how do I make this life with all of these bill payments and children? The responsibility felt very big to me. Doesn't mean that they aren't out there. I just felt as if I didn't know what they could possibly be. So I focused on those moments that did feel good because there were a lot of them. But the overall picture, yeah, it wasn't, it could have been different if I had known more, but I didn't. And my husband didn't. And the people in our community, friends group, whatever, nobody had the tools. Nobody was talking like this back then. It all felt there was a lot of limitation. And that's where I got to have the desire for choice born. And that became very strong within me, wanting to have freedom, wanting to have choices. So again, I can look back and say, well, nothing went wrong. I was creating preferences and I was shooting them out ahead of me. And they're out there to be picked up when I'm ready for them, is how I sometimes think about it. When doesn't feel good, I know I'm shooting those rockets of desire out ahead for the thing that feels better. And I'm going to keep going, and they're just going to be there whenever I'm ready. All I got to do is pick it up and it'll be easy. So.
Yeah. And what I love about that is that, just the whole, I know we're both familiar with this, the phrase that nothing has gone wrong, which is something that the council says so often, like nothing has gone wrong, because it is all exploration. It is all experience. There's a lot of variety here. And through the variety, we develop preferences. We try out a new relationship. We try out a new contribution to the world. We try out a new living space. And through all of that, we're forming preferences. And as our preferences are formed, then we move in what seems to be clearer directions, because we're like, okay, I've tried a number of things now. I know I really like this in this area of my life, and that in my area of my life. I know I wouldn't want that again. And so, from that clarity, from the exploration, it's like, our paths become more fine-tuned in a way. And then there's still so much more experience. It's like, there's another phrase. I think both Abraham Hicks and the council say this in their own ways, but like, you're never going to get it done. There's always going to be more to explore.
Yes. And that gives me a lot of peace, because it helps, again, to soften that idea of lack, of there's not enough time. I better hurry up and get this goal or accomplish that or make this much money. It's like, there is no end. So, there is no measuring stick of getting it done. You'll never be done. Even if you set a goal, when you reach the goal, there's just going to be another goal. And we can allow that to add some playfulness and some lightness. Like we're here to have some fun. It doesn't have to be so serious. And I used to be very serious. And I'll sometimes notice like, oh, I'm feeling that kind of that heaviness again of, oh, I'm making this a really big deal. How can I be lighter about it? How can I have some fun with it? Maybe I just need to take a break. But I'm tuned in more now that you do know the feeling. You do know when it feels good. You can feel it in your body. You can feel it in your energy, your tone of voice. Everything will reflect that. And it's fun to observe, because when we don't make ourselves get down and dirty in the pits all the time, when we can take a little bit of a step back and observe and go, oh, isn't that funny? I'm having that old same reaction again. That's interesting. How do I feel about this? Like it just lets you breathe a bit more, chill out a bit more. Even if you're not feeling great, you can be okay with it. And just, this is interesting. Isn't it wonderful that I have this guidance system? Isn't it wonderful that I can tune into myself so cleanly and clearly and learn more about what I want? This is an amazing gift.
Yeah, and it brings back to my awareness. I remember back being in college. I know in the States we tend to say college, and I've noticed like in Europe and Canada it tends to be called university.
Yeah.
And I've been learning a lot about slight language differences. I know they mean the same thing, but different words are used. And so in the States we tend to say college. And I remember how there was this direction like early on in college, because a lot of people feel this pressure to like know what their major is, and
Yes.
they need to have the same major for like the entire, and then there was this other narrative that I think came from more of like counselors, and they were like, you know, just try something. And if you don't like it, you can always change it. You can always change it. And some people like through their first 2 years, they do what's it called here? It's something it's like a very vague, I'm going blank on the term right now, but it's like I think it's called liberal arts, where
Okay,
you don't
sure.
necessarily have a major, but you have a little bit of you have a lot of different kinds of courses on your plate so that you are
Yeah.
getting different exposure. And maybe through those first 2 years, you start to see what excites you and what starts to. And so as you're describing that, yeah, I was getting this sense of there's just so much permission, and there doesn't need to be this fix like I have to do this for the next, if I start exploring it today, if I start moving down this path today, like I have to do it for the next 10 years. Like it doesn't need to be that pressure. A lot of times we don't know. We don't know until we do try something out. Like we're curious about it, we're not sure. And then we try it out. And, after some time, again, we develop preferences. And from that point, it's perfectly what you and I are both aware of is that we are absolutely free. There is no set agenda. So if we try something out, even for like 3 months, and we're like, I think I got what I needed. Like it's perfectly fine to
Yeah.
put that down. Like, okay, I
Yes.
tried that. And then, okay, well, now what? Now what direction feels fun? Because I mean, we all are perfectly free. There's so much variety, so much to explore. And it's through the exploration, through that allowing ourselves to be free and move in the paths and the directions that feel good, that we again create the preferences that then inform whatever the next path is. So I love this releasing of the pressure, releasing of the agenda, releasing of the, any kind of set, it needs to be like this for so long. Like, yeah, all of that. I mean, I'll let you speak for yourself, but yeah, that feels very, I'm so glad I don't live in that, what feels to me like a very confined way of, it has to be this or it has to be that for a certain amount of time. It's just, I'm just playing with what feels good right now.
I love everything you just said. And one of the areas that stands out to me so much in my own life and with the clients that I work with through my coaching, it's allowing ourselves to release the attachment to the outcome. And we have something in our mind, and we often it's often something that's imposed on us. Like you say, well, if you start college, you better get your degree. You got to stick it out for 4 years. You got to get that piece of paper. Or I signed up for this course and I haven't been motivated to do the work, but I spent all this money. I really need to make myself do it so I can finish. Anything like that. It's where we set this end goal for ourselves, and then we become so attached that that's what that end goal needs to look like. And I get it because that's how I was raised, for sure. And yet, from this new perspective, with everything you just said, to allow ourselves to be free and open about it. What if signing up for the course was the goal? What if everything we got, everything we were meant to have as a benefit just from signing up? What if we didn't need to do the work? What if we did some of the work but just didn't finish it? And yet we learned skills, we learned to ask new questions, we learned something about ourselves. To know that there's value in everything without having to hit a specific goal, that's where I think the gold is for us as we move through and experience life. And it's been good for me to practice because I used to be very attached to outcomes. I knew what it was supposed to look like. And when that didn't happen, it's like, I've done it wrong. I should have done this differently or whatever. You really get that inner critic in your head telling you things. When you release that it needs to look like anything, then you allow it to be everything for you. And that inner critic has nothing to criticize because it feels so good what you're doing and how you're experiencing it, and the ease and the flow and the fun, because all of that energy is coming through because you're allowing yourself to follow your highest excitement. That's a big shift. And I do think it's becoming more common now. And I love that we can talk about it and encourage people to feel into what does feel good for them. And money is a big one, because so often people say, but I spent so much money. Even you're clearing out your closet. Do you wear this anymore? No. Well, why don't you, let's donate it to charity. That cost me $300. I'm not going to get rid of it, but you don't wear it. So I'm just releasing all of these attachments. It doesn't mean we don't get to have things. It just means we get to have everything we want.
Just absorbing all that for a moment here. Because I love this this energy that we're playing in right now, and just like feeling into. Yeah, so I guess what's coming up for me is that, so I spend a lot of time, I'm very blessed in that I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I don't know, because I know you've listened to Abraham a lot, and I don't know if I feel like I've listened to a lot of Abraham too, and I feel like I probably heard this along the way, but I've also heard so many hours of Abraham that sometimes it's hard to remember which ones I've heard live. But I had a friend recently send me something from Abraham. It was like a quote, an excerpt from one of the, thousands and thousands and thousands of, live conferences. And it was something about, you're not actually, it was something, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the gist of it was like, you think you're teaching the children, and the children come here to teach you.
Oh, yes. Abraham has very specific ideas about children and, their innocence, their purity, their connection to source. And until we teach them differently, they follow their highest excitement. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I want that. And then we teach them, no, you can't have what you want. You need to wait. You need to go to bed now, even though you're not tired. You need to wake up now, even though you are. And it's, as a parent, I do find it interesting. I'm glad that I didn't have those ideas when I had young children, because I don't know what I would have done with it. And because there is this, again, this piece of control that you think you can't just let children do whatever they want, or eat whatever they want, or go to bed when they want. And yet, studies show that actually when they do let children do that, here's all the food that you want, and they'll eat all the sweets first. And then eventually they'll move to the vegetables with nobody telling them different. They will create patterns in their body that feel good. So it is, I think, wonderful when we can be around children and observe that and take a cue from that. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite sounds in the world is a young child giggling when they see bubbles. Like, I can blow bubbles, those little, you put the stopper in and then you blow through the little hole, and I could do that for hours and hours and hours, which is good, because if you do that for a child, happily, they will laugh for hours and hours and hours. And so to me, that's whenever I want to feel better about anything, I just remember the last time I did that with a child, and I feel better. I feel happy.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, I learn so much every time, I'm around any of them, and especially when they're all together. And so the guest that I had before this episode, her name is Alexandria. She does channeled readings for pets, and I also sometimes call them furry home companions, and like cats and dogs. And and she said that one of the things that she's gotten from the animals is the animals have communicated to her that humans are the most domesticated species on the planet. And when I watch my nieces and nephews, like, because a big word that's been coming up for me and probably the past few months here is unhindered. I've started to say, like, my unhindered self. And when I watch, like, what's coming to mind for me right now is my 2-year-old nephew. He moves exactly how he wants to move. He expresses, he's silly, he's goofy, he makes faces, he twirls, he dances. And of course, we know that inner critic is something that is taught, it's developed, it's modeled. And watching him I can tell, like, there's not anything up there saying, like, oh, you're gonna look silly if you move like that. You're gonna, it's gonna be weird if you just like sing a song at the top of your lungs. Like he is just like, he is to me the embodiment of a free, expressive being. Like, again, following his highest joy. And 1 minute it could be singing a song at the top of his lungs. The next it could be dancing and twirling, and you could just see how much joy he gets from it. And it's not, even the dancing, it's, to me, it just radiates because it feels good. It's not so that anybody will think he's a good dancer. It's because it just feels so good. He's feeling the music and it feels so good to move his body. And so that phrase has been coming to mind. And from Esther, like, you think that you're teaching them, but they actually come here to teach you. And when I watch them, I'm like, man, they really are examples. And like you said, there's the, depending on the household, there's the rules and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. In general, though, even with some of the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, they are so expressive, they are so free. And I look at it and I'm just like, I'm like, wow, like it excites me because I see how even more unhindered I can allow myself to be, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes. So much so. Because how much of us, even as we feel we're making strides and we're tuning into what we want, there is still often an element of fear of judgment from other people. What if my hair looks like this? People might judge it. What if how if I choose to dress this way, people might judge it? How about if I change my career? So many people are leaving their corporate jobs to move into a bit more of a spiritual world, but there's a lot of fear of what will people think. And the more we allow ourselves to separate from that, oh my gosh, the freedom that's there, it's everything. Can I share a little story about on the Abraham cruises? There is a very favorite activity, and it usually happens 2 or 3 times on every cruise. It's very common amongst the world. The only place I've had it, though, is on this cruise ship. It's called a silent disco. Do you know about silent discos?
I've seen a number of them. I think I myself have participated in one, but I've seen a lot of footage of them. So yeah, I am familiar.
So for anyone not familiar, a silent disco, they hand out these Bluetooth headsets for everyone. And there are 3 music channels available. So everyone is in an area to dance, and yet they have the choice of choosing whatever music they want, and it only is audible in their earphones. So anyone looking at the group doesn't hear any music, but everyone else can choose the music that feels good for them. And within that context, people seem to have so much freedom. This isn't like the old dance where you have to have someone to dance with. Even people who don't know anyone, the groups just spread. There's such energy about it because everyone is so excited because they can keep choosing. If they don't like one song, they can go click through, have more choices, and people are singing. You can tell what other people are listening to because there's a color coding. And so you can say, you can point, you're listening to Blue's so awesome. And you can be singing along, but you literally have, let's say, 50 to 100 people in different groupings singing along to 3 different songs. But there's just a sense of community and fun and energy. And people don't care like, oh, people are watching me dance or I feel kind of awkward. It's fun. And it's light and it's free. And you've let go of all of those judgmenty type things because you're just grooving along and you're finding your community of maybe you gravitate towards more people who are doing the same beat that you're doing or singing the same songs. And it's just a great example, I think, of that free and that light and that fun that you can have when you just let go of all those old worries about what do other people think.
Yeah. I can totally relate because that's been my process for a number of years now. Back when I was studying acting in person in Los Angeles a few years back, before I left the city, I started out taking, I always loved the dance. I had a lot of history with dancing and, just, it was never educated formal dance. It was me moving the way I wanted to move. And then I took these intuitive movement classes that were a part of my acting course of study. And I remember a big part of the instruction was, don't move the way your head thinks you should move. Really allow your body, like tune into your body. How would it feel good for your body to move? And it was a practice. It was a practice, really becoming aware that there's a lot of, even with dancing, there's a lot of ways that the mind says, like, this is how you should dance. This is how you should dance, quote unquote should. And then seeing how there was this, it's like the mind was playing in this sandbox of how it thought it was okay to move. And then you tune into the body, and the body wants to do something completely different. Like, it's more like being a kid. What would it feel like to try this? What would it feel like to try that? And there's no rhyme or reason or form. It's just exploration. And to really learn to connect to that, like, how does your body intuitively want to move rather than your mind trying to go like, well, if I move like this, it's going to look pretty.
Exactly. Just move because it feels good to move, exactly how it feels good to move. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would love to hear a bit, since we're talking about all of this freedom and expansion, expression. I'd love to just hear a little bit more in your words about how you help your clients. Like, yeah, just however you want to describe it, how you help people, what you help them with. I mean, who you tend to help, whatever feels good to share, because yeah, we're here talking about all this freedom and and breaking free of all of these shoulds and shouldn'ts. And I know that what you bring to the table is definitely in line with that. So yeah, I would love to hear a bit more about it if you're open to sharing.
Absolutely. And I love what I do so much. And one of the reasons is the freedom I have with my schedule, the freedom to work with people who interest me and excite me, and also that ability to allow people to learn what I learned. And I don't teach them, I work with their inner guidance, because I think Abraham does say that words don't teach, life experience teaches. And I want to stretch that to even say, like, your inner knowing is your greatest teacher, because as you go through your life experience, you do have the guidance. And so if anything, I allow and encourage people to tune into what that guidance is. Like, what does it feel like in your body? What does feel good? You remember that time and that didn't feel good? And how about this time when it did feel good? Yeah, we can choose to feel that better feeling consciously and more. We can create our own realities. So all that kind of sounds like mumbo jumbo in some ways, but what I love doing is I love helping people just gain a new perspective. And so I often work with entrepreneurs, people either wanting to create businesses out of their gifts and what lights them up and excites them, or maybe they have a business and they're not sure how to move it forward. And usually people have the same bottom, like, underlining issue, which is just not remembering how important it is to tune into that own inner guidance. And so with a guide, it allows them to move out of the story, because people love to hold on to their story, because that's what we think makes us who we are. And that's one reason why I kind of fast forwarded through basically 18 years of my history, is I don't want to stay back there telling you this story and that story, because that's not my story anymore. And I don't have to really look over there very much. It got me to exactly this moment today. It was perfect. It was just right. And it created this launching pad that I have for, my next now moment and the next 50 years. So I'm so happy and grateful and appreciative of it. But I don't want to keep looking back and dredging things forward. So with clients, they often like to do a lot of explaining and wondering and questioning, and that's okay. But I allow them to just release some of that and look at what is the important matter, and how can we tune into the guidance about that. So then you do know what your next steps are. when you're worried about getting bogged down all these details, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I should do this, and I should do that. What if we let all that go for a minute and felt into what feels good? And it feels simplistic to kind of talk about, but the shifts and the ahas and the light bulb moments that people have, it's that clarity. It seems so surprising to them, but then it feels simple. And then they have those tools to continually check in for themselves as they do progress and go along, and they start to see evidence. You mean I can work less and have more? I can choose to do things for myself, and clients will call me back. Like all those little times in your day that you feel bogged down and that you're meeting other people's needs and it doesn't feel good, we can shift that. We can actually change it. And I've experienced it so strongly in my own life. I love having people come back to me and say, you'll never guess what happened. It's like, I think I can guess, but I want you to tell me because I'm so excited. You're excited by this. So that's what I do all day. As I talk to people who are excited about their life, when maybe a month ago they were worried about this and wondering about that, and nothing felt good, and they get to create a whole new life for themselves if they want it.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing just to hear it in your own words. And a couple of things I just wanted to affirm in my own experiences early on in my experience of channeling for others, before I really had went more public with it. That's one of the things that came through in a session was that life experience is the greatest teacher. Because we hear a lot of these things that help us get a better understanding of how life works. And to me, it's more like on a mental level. It's like, okay, I understand the inner workings of the greater life. And then as we have experiences that line up with that, it's from that experience that we really have a deep sense of knowing that, oh yeah, what I focus on, I tend to experience more of. Like I see how it, first I understood this concept of what you focus on, you attract more in of that. So in the beginning, it's like, okay, I understand. But then as you watch in your life how, and I can speak to my life, like, especially as of late, I've talked about this a bit on the podcast, but my higher self, my inner being has been showing me how incredibly easy creation is, where the things that for instance, the things that I just think about and kind of like a daydreaming way for just like 5 seconds and go. So I'll give an example here because it happens more and more all the time. But for instance, I'm plant-based, so it'll be something like, I really, vanilla plant-based ice cream. Wow, that feels so good. Yeah, that feels good. And then it's just, okay, well, now what am I doing? And then I just like let it go. I completely forget about it. And then I'm not kidding. This has happened more than once. Like the next day or within 3 days, literally the ice cream comes to me. And
Exactly.
I'm just like, I didn't have to make any plans. I didn't have to figure anything out. It's just like literally in my real everyday life, it'll be like, hey, did you want this vanilla plant-based? I'm like, I thought about that yesterday.
Yep. And what a beautiful example, because that can happen all of the time. You have a light desire, you felt into it a little bit, like that really would be satisfying. Let it go. Don't need to take action. And it comes to you. And it's the most fun in the world. It's basically just, it's playing a game of just like, I loved the idea of this. I can have it or not. It doesn't really matter. It was fun to think about. And it will come to you. I just love it.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like that's what I feel that my higher self, my inner being, which of course are the same thing, we just have these different terms. But that's what I've been being shown is this, the most powerful thing is this, and I know I'm pretty sure it's the way Bashar says it, but Abraham might say it the same way too, is the phrase no insistence on outcome. So I've been shown that that's the key. And it's also been interesting to me to see how we've been taught to classify things as some things are kind of minor, not that important. Other things are a big deal and very important. Whereas maybe you've also heard this, but I've heard that to the universe, it's all the same. The universe doesn't go like $5 million is more difficult than a pint of vanilla ice cream. It's just what is what is different is our level of resistance, the resistance that we've learned, whereas $5 million, like that would take a whole lot of figuring out, a whole lot of planning, a whole lot of hard work, like we put all of these shoulds around it and we seem like, it would have to take all of this for that to happen. Whereas the vanilla ice cream, we've just been taught to look at that as very simple and like, oh yeah, like vanilla ice cream, it's kind of everywhere. Like I could easily have it if I wanted it. And so it's our level of resistance that makes the difference is what I've learned. And I see, in my own experience how like, yeah, I've been taught to make some things a big deal and probably be very complicated for it to come to be, whereas other things are just like, it's like it's so easy. And that's what I've been getting from my inner being is feel into what feels good and then have no insistence about, like you said, whether it happens or not. Just be clear that it feels good, be clear that it delights you. And then if it really is in your highest and best to have that experience, whether it's tomorrow or a week from now or even 2 years from now, it's like if it's really in your highest and best good, like it will come to you in the easiest possible way. And what I've seen also is that a lot of things could come to us if we allowed it to be that simple and easy. It's when we get all caught up in like, how is it going to happen? What do I have to do? Even the who do I have to become? Because I didn't have to become anybody to like let that vanilla ice cream in. Like literally, it was as simple as that feels creamy. That feels delightful. Huh. Hmm. Well, that was nice. Okay. Now I think I'm like washing dishes or something. And like literally,
Mhm.
like you said, I didn't have to take action. I didn't have to, say, how is this going to happen? When is it going to happen? Like literally the first time, because it's happened more than once, but the first time the next day in passing, it was just like, oh, I have this vegan vanilla ice cream that, I'm not going to use. Do you want it? And I was just like, I was literally, I was just like, all I did was think about it.
Yep. Abraham has the expression because I do believe it's a universal truth. Absolutely. Their expression is it's as easy to have a castle as a button because we know it's easy. If we lose a button, we can just go to the store, get another one, whatever. Maybe people used to have button jars but it's all the same. It's all the same. The only thing that's different is our resistance and our belief that it's going to be hard or it's going to take time. We get to choose. Do we think it's going to be hard or take time? Then we're right. Do we think it's not possible? Then we're right. And so that goes the other way too. Of course I can have it. Of course I can. Why wouldn't? Why wouldn't that just be easy? Why wouldn't that just come across my plate? And when you're open to that, you get to see so many magical, you know, instances of evidence, just more and more and more. And I think what that for me, I get so excited and I speak quickly. So let me know if I'm talking too quickly. But what that means for me is play more, imagine more, ponder more, daydream more, fantasize more. What do you want? What do you want? And play with it. Be light about it. It doesn't matter if it comes or not, or when or how. Abraham will often start a sentence, if you could have anything, and then go back and correct. Since you can have anything, what do you want? And that was something I'd never asked myself in that old life, because why would I try to think about something that I was never going to have anyway? Why would I let myself kind of get hopeful about it, or I'd just be disappointed, or all those old thoughts? Now it's play, it's fun. I run a group in or a game in some groups about, it's called the prosperity game. And there's all kinds of different variations on the internet, but it's where you allow yourself to imagine spending money. Just like you have to spend it. You don't get to save it. You have to spend it. And it's not about having material goods per se. It's about exercising your imagination of, if I had to spend $1,000 today, and it could be on anything, what would I do? What about a week or so or 2 weeks later when it's 50,000 or 100,000? It has to, I need to spend it today. What would I do? And it allows you to feel into what would feel good and fun. And it's fun to play that game in different rounds, because sometimes you want to give it all away. Like, oh, I'm going to buy things for all my friends and family, or pay my parents' mortgage, or, you're very altruistic. Sometimes you make it all about the material goods. Oh, I'm finally going to, buy that thing that I've always wanted. And sometimes it becomes, about all like charity. I'm going to create a foundation for this, and I'm going to give the kids hospital that. And how much fun is it to play with all of them? Because they're all possible. Nothing is good or bad. We don't have to judge it. We're allowed to have material goods if we want them. We're allowed to give it all away if we want to. We're allowed to help our friends and family if we want to. Anything.
I love that game so much because I see how it takes the imagination and the practicality out of about I just see how it gets out of the paradigm. Well, if I were to have that, I would need to know how, or I would need to understand how it would happen. It's really like a permission slip just to like really get clear. Like, again, the $100,000 is here today, and you got to do, and like the kind of the setup for this game is you got to do something with it today. So because you have it for 24 hours, so like,
and you'll have 200,000 tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
There's no need to hold on to it. Well, I should put it in my retirement, or you're going to have like twice as much tomorrow. It's just there to play with today. What would you like to play with today?
Yeah, I see how it creates so much permission to really just get clear. I mean, when you were talking, one of the first things that came up to me is like, I would get a massage.
Yes, nice. Good place to start.
Get a massage. I'd probably go get like an acai bowl, like all these ideas to, in that, like anything today that I desire, like, the massage came in, the acai bowl came in, the idea of like have you ever seen how people kind of like fake skydive? There's like the setup where with all the fans, and you're kind of like you're skydiving, but you're like, that idea came in. I was like, I would do that.
It would be fun. And then as the amounts go up, of course, then you just get to keep playing and pushing the boundaries. And maybe it's a matter of, I could take all my friends, or I could have a personal masseuse who comes in 4 days a week or 7 days a week. Like, you can allow yourself just to keep playing and stretching it. So it's super fun. It's the energy of it.
Yeah. And as you and I know, the thing that's beautiful is that it's all source energy. It's all source energy, and anything that comes into our reality is an extension of our energy, because as you and I know, we're the consciousness that's creating our reality. Yes. It's kind of like, I mean, a fun way to look at it is this really amazing virtual game we're playing, and we have this, this fun human avatar. And that's the consciousness that's creating the human. It's the consciousness that summons and forms all the energy into whatever it is. And it's all source energy. So yeah, there's no need to say something like, again, there's all these learned limitations. Well, I shouldn't have that because then I would be too indulgent, and, or I shouldn't have that because then what would people think of me? It's like, no matter what you have, it's all source energy. So whether it's the Tesla or whether it's a 2008 Subaru hatchback, like, it's like, all that really matters is that it's what feels fun to you. It's what feels good to you, because when it comes down to it, it's the same energy. And whatever it is, it's based on those preferences, and we all get to have our own preferences. So
yeah, I love it. It's such a great reminder. And when you play the game, you do shift your energy in even little subtle ways. And then of course, the key is, just as you were saying, when now you're at this new energy, things that will match that new energy will flow into you and you'll see evidence of it. You're not trying to make anything happen, but you might be playing that game on the side. I like to play it with groups because it's fun to see what other people would do, but you don't have to. You can just write it down for yourself every day and things will flow to you. Someone might give you something. Hey, I got tickets to a hockey game. You want to come with me? Hey, tickets to the ballet. I've got this ice cream and I don't need it anymore. Like, it can come from anywhere. It can be absolutely anything, but you will be attracting that receiving energy, like feeling good, receiving, treating yourself. If money is the thing and you love the idea of a massage, you might end up, here's a coupon in the mail, like something that just makes it feel easier and more accessible. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that game just for the freedom that it invokes. And then, of course, as we were talking about before, just again, the less insistent we are upon any of it, the more open we are, then, I mean, yeah, just the more open that we are. And again, it's like whatever is the most fun for the universe, our higher self, to bring to us. And a lot of times, as you've probably heard, I mean, I've heard this so many times, like, again, anytime we get attached to, so if we're having fun playing with the idea of our favorite car, if we get too attached to that, it's like, well, now we could be holding back something even better, because it's like anytime we're insistent on one particular outcome, one particular anything, we are now limiting ourselves from the infinite possibilities. And the way it's translated to me, it's fun for us to play with the ideas because we are opening up our energy, we are opening up to possibility, and there's so many of them. And so that's the idea, like open up our energy, open up our ability to receive. But then when we lock onto one thing, we say, I need it to be like this, I need it on a certain time frame. Well, then we start to close ourselves down because it's like, because the other thing that comes to me when you were talking about the castle, because a lot of times it's because we haven't had a certain experience, it's nice to think about it. And I've heard many stories of this, maybe you have too, where if we even get so specific that I need to own it, I need to own that thing. Sometimes we don't, it's fun to think about it, but until we have the experience, we don't necessarily know. We think about all the amazing things, but then we don't realize all the other things that come along with it. So it might be fun to say, like, I'd like to own a castle.
Yeah.
And if you've never had that experience and you're so insistent that I need to own a castle, it might be, the universe might be more like, okay, you like the idea of a castle. Let me orchestrate where through a friend of a friend, someone needs, house sitting for a castle for a month, like you get this opportunity to house sit in a castle for a month. So now you get the experience of going there. And through this month, you get to see a lot of things that you do enjoy, but then you might be like, oh, I didn't realize that this was involved and that was involved and that was involved. Actually, maybe I don't want to own a castle. Maybe I just would like to rent one out from time to time. And it's because, again, of the openness that we allow us to get a taste of the experience. Whereas if we're saying, I need to own it, I have to own it, well, that might not be in our highest and best, because our higher self, knowing the full picture, would be like, well, you think you want to own it, but you don't realize all that's involved. So just stay open. Just let us, let yourself just, get a taste of this and the taste of that. And then maybe through the month of castle sitting, you do get clear, actually, what, I've had a taste and I do want to own it. And so it's just that I feel like it's come up many times in our conversation. It's just the openness,
Yes. Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because there was someone just in the hot seat with Abraham on this last cruise who said, I want to have a yacht. And Abraham said right out, like, you don't want to have a yacht. What is it about having that yacht that feels good for you? And that's what you want, because the yacht's got expense and there's maintenance and there's upkeep and blah, 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 blah. It's like, what do you want? Like, he wanted the freedom. He wanted the sense of adventure, a place that he could invite people to go have days on the water. So those were the feelings of it. And I love because I recently snipped a portion from one of my sessions, and it was exactly what you just said, whereas you can't know all of the options. So why would you limit yourself by having that idea of it has to be this? Instead, allow yourself to reflect on how do you want to feel? Because that should, that's the only, well, I try not to use should too often, but I do like it in this case, because in my mind, feeling into what do I want to feel is the best question you can ask yourself about anything. It's the foundation for all of your decisions of how do I want to feel? And that's right from when you first wake up in the morning, how do I want to feel today, to when you're maybe anticipating going to an event or something in the future of how do I want to feel in that? Even the fancy car, I want a new car. How do I want to feel driving that new car? And that just allows that vibration to go out. And as you say, what it actually looks like, what that experience or that actual thing is, the universe has got your back at all times and will bring to you where you allow that to feel good. As long as you don't have all that resistance of, I probably can never have that. If that's where the thoughts end up going, then you're right.
Yeah. Well, just on the feeling note, yeah, that's something that I feel that I first learned through Mike Dooley years ago. I'm pretty sure it was a course he did with Hay House that was called Playing the Matrix. And then of course, as with these teachings, I've heard in other ways, like I'm pretty sure I've heard Abraham talk about this way of approaching like creation. And I've definitely heard the council channeled by Sarah Landon speak of this approach. And it is really getting clear on the feelings, not so much on the details, what it needs to look like. And that's what I feel like the first time I learned it was through Mike Dooley. And it was essentially like, just get clear. Like, I want to experience more fun. I want to experience more connection. I want to experience more intimacy. I want to experience more abundance, prosperity. Like, get clear on the feelings, and then allow yourself now more and more in the now moment into those feelings now. And then just let your higher self, the universe, bring to you, because it's, from our mind, we don't know all the options. There's so much out there that we've never experienced before that we actually would delight in and enjoy. We just don't know it's even an option. And so when we play with the feelings, we do stay open to levels of fun that we could never plan ahead of time. It's like the relationship, the opportunity, maybe it's like a sports league, whatever. There's so many options. If we get clear, like, I want to have more fun, I'm just clear I want to have more fun. Like, the most amazing opportunity to be in a sports league that we would have never thought about could show up. It could be an easy yes. Someone could even say like, hey, I want to do this. Will you do it with me for the season? Here's the details. I'll even pay for you to join the league. Like, and if it comes to us and we're like, well, that sounds like a good time. It's like, those are the things that we open ourselves up to. Like, it's not planned. It's not premeditated. It's just like, I'm clear that more fun feels good. And then from the unlimited options, like, our higher selves is like, like, what about this? and and then we go, oh, I never saw that coming, but actually, it feels great. So I think it's a yes.
Exactly, because it feels like such a fun surprise because you haven't tried to pigeonhole it, and yet it can feel so good and light and easy. And knowing that if something comes and it doesn't feel good and light and easy, then there is something even better coming along. We don't, again, that sense of lack never has to enter into it, because there's always going to be more, always. And if we do jump at it and then we're not satisfied, nothing's ever gone wrong, because some people will think, I did everything right. I had the light desire. I let go of the outcome, and then this showed up. Well, that's not what I wanted. Like, it seemed okay, but look at how it's turned out. Perfect. It's perfect. You now have even more preferences, more desires that can be fulfilled going forward. And a lot of times people will use the relationships as that, like, well, I met this new person, and he seemed to check all the boxes, but then all these other things I found out. It's like, great. Now you have even more ideas of what you prefer and what feels good for you. And I'm not suggesting that we need other people to check boxes, because my sense, I haven't talked about it, and I will just slide it in here so subtly of, I do believe that everyone for their highest good can allow themselves to be unconditionally happy. We don't actually need that person to, do this so that we can feel happy. We don't need that car so that we can feel happy. We can feel happy and then allow everything to unfold. However, the point of the preferences, I think, is still valid. We are always going to evolve and get to choose more. So great. More options on their way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, because then just honing in on your point about happiness, from that place where we really have attuned to our inner world and really created our inner world in a way that feels good to us. It's like, from that place, to me, it's like all the outside things just begin to become bonus, like whether they're there or not, our inner world is in a good place. And to me, that's number one, because that is that's everything. It's the experience that's happening all the time. So when we learn to really tend to our inner garden and make that what we really would like it to be, and of course that's an ongoing thing, it's a practice, it's it's a garden, so it requires attention and intentionality. And so from that place, when we really are creating our inner world the way that we would like it to be, it's like, I mean, I feel like I kind of wrote this today in a social media post. It's like, even in the quiet moments where it really feels like nothing's happening, there still is so much joy, so much beauty, even just like looking into the sun and watching the way it like hits the leaves, like that can be the most rich experience when the inner world is like in a really good place. If the inner world's not in a good place, you might miss it completely. You might not even notice the way the sun is hitting the leaves. But from that really like that inner garden, like being in a good place because we've attended to it and we've consciously created the way we want it to be more and more. It's like, then, even what we call the simple things in the world, we begin to see them in a new light. Like we don't, sometimes for me, it's like, just again, the way seeing the sun hit something, like the way what that does for the soul, it's like you can't even put words on it. It's like that just that just spoke to my soul the way, like, maybe like 15 Rumi poems did.
True. It's true. Yeah. And you're open to it. And when you are open to that type of experience, you can appreciate just the miracle of it. It's a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so it's like, yeah, whatever it is, whether it's the way the sun hits the leaves, or maybe you find out that someone's like, oh, I'm not going to be using this car for a month, but I want someone to drive it. And it's like a car that you've always pictured yourself in. It's like, well, that's fun too. And it's just, yeah. So from that place of really having your inner garden, cultivated in a way that feels good to you, there's just so much bonus that's available, and and whether it stays or whether it goes, it's like, it doesn't really, when we're good with ourselves on the inside, it's just like, I find that it creates so much flexibility. Well, as long as it's here, like, I'm going to enjoy it. If it moves on, okay. Like you said, there's always more. That was what it needed to be. And there's always more. So yeah, like what I'm getting here, what I really feel that you've been bringing is really coming from that. In truth, like, the universe is an overflowing cup, it's an overflowing cup of experiences and relationships and fun things and even material things that may come and go. And it's like, the more that we are just in that overflowing cup, like vibration, we don't really need to like pin it down. Like you said, we don't need to pin down the 100,000 today, because the universe is an overflowing cup. Like, that's the essence. There's always more. You don't need to get attached to You don't need to like cling and I need this for this long and I need it to be that way for that long, because the nature of things is there's always more. And when you're open and you're really just allowing yourself to dream and be open, there's always more delightful things that can show up if we're allowing them to.
And knowing that it's that common factor is us. It's always us. And so when we know that it's possible, then it happens. And it's you don't have to know that each thing is possible, just knowing that there's always more, that there is flow, and that what flows to you will be a match to you. And when you see what is flowing, that's your evidence. Oh, this is what I'm a match to. So if you're not loving what's flowing to you, just know this is the match. And if this is not as satisfying as I want it to be, what can I do within myself to shift to, feel a little bit better, or find some joy, find some more peace, find whatever it is that maybe doesn't feel like it's as good as I would like it to be. And then when you are at that new place, you'll get to see the evidence of what matches me now. And it can be fun, and that openness. And I think one of the best things is the more you start to see the evidence, then you can move through the stages of doubting that it's possible for you, to trusting that it's possible, and then moving into that knowing, of just pure knowing, not even needing to see the evidence anymore, because and it's going to feel like no big deal when it happens. It's just like, great, fun. Like, not, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. It's like, of course it happened. Good things are always flowing to me and through me. I offer my time, I offer my money, I offer my energy, I receive it from others. It's that flow, it's that interconnectedness of all things, where we get to play in this energy all together. We're all in this together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel this is I know it's been a big, it comes down to allowance. This has been a really, because I feel that I've been going through a rebirth in a lot of ways, because I was exposed to many different ideologies growing up, and I'm really seeing how in my own journey I'm being invited to see things from like that really, really simple, that innocence. And so to speak to this, because this has been really important for me, so I have a feeling it may be of service to others. So earlier today, I was with a nephew who's a newborn, like, still a newborn. And looking down as I was holding him, I was like, of course, like, I'm not his parent, and, I'm not his parent. I have love for him. He's, a part of, this container we call a family. But looking down at him, I was like, of course, like I would want him to have all the most amazing experiences in this life, to explore what feels fun and enjoyable, and just to have the freedom to know that he can explore, whatever feels fun, whatever feels interesting, whatever feels exciting, and just to let it be the best it can possibly be. Like, of course, like that's what I would want for him. And then zooming out and realizing that source energy, like this is my truth, that source energy, which we are a part of, it's not separate from us. Like we all are extensions from source. But just using the metaphor of like a parent model, that origination point, source energy, I feel how us having these unique human experiences, that it's the same thing. I want you to have the best time here. I want you to explore and play and enjoy, because there's a whole lot of options. There's a whole lot of beauty. There's so much fun to be had. So I want you to play and explore and go towards what you're curious about. Really, for me, it's like, it's done so much for me to realize that it's just so simple to see. I mean, it really is. It's powerful for me when I realize that it's just so natural for me to want that for someone that I love, who's so new here on earth. And then to realize that it's the exact same thing for me and my relation to source energy. It's like, it's the same thing. And so then it's like, it just helps me get into more of a receptive mode, to be like, there's just something about like, yeah, it is just, I think, the innocence that children represent, that we look at them and we want the best for them, like we want them to have the best possible lives. And it's a mirror though, like, okay, well, what we want for them, can we allow that for ourselves too?
And that's it. And take it that one step further because of your assumption that he is worthy of having anything and
Yeah.
everything. And so are you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in. It's like, yeah, like you're worthy. I want you to have everything that would light you up. I want that for you. And so, yeah, like realizing that, yeah, it's the same thing that, like I am worthy too. So can I allow the same for me? And so, because that is the big one, right? We have free will here. So we're the ones allowing, we're the ones opening up or closing ourselves off. And the more allowing, the more worthy we feel, then we open ourselves up to all the kinds of things that we've been talking about.
Yes, all those infinite possibilities just dropping in.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so expansive and so fun. To me, it just, yeah, it feels like play. It feels like really allowing our energy to be open. So thank you so much for taking the time to play today and in the realm of
Thank
infinite
you.
possibilities. It's been a delight. And I'm just curious, is there any, with everything we've talked about, any final like sentiments or offerings you'd like to leave to anyone who's listening to this now or later? From your own life or just what you're learning now, it can be anything.
I think it's, what a great question. I remind people to give themselves some grace. We didn't come here to be perfect. We came here to explore. We're explorers. And not all explorations seem successful. And you can look at history if that's, excites you, and you can see all these different explorers who set off and this went wrong and they landed on the wrong continent and all the rest. But nothing went wrong because the world was getting explored and mapped out. And that's really what we're here for ourselves to do. And for those people who feel as if they do know this work, they do know this play, they do have this awareness, and then there are days when it doesn't feel as if things are working out for them, to give themselves a bit of grace and say, you know what? This is how I feel today. And nothing is going wrong. And maybe I don't even feel like feeling better today. Maybe I'm going to have a nap or go to bed or just zone out for a little while. And I'm going to start again tomorrow. But when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to remember that I do get to choose. And if I can find anything that feels like a good thought, I get to allow myself to feel that good, even if it's just for a few moments. And that will help create new vibration and new momentum. And what shows up in your world will start to match that better feeling. That's what I've learned.
Well, I really, I feel that's so important because, and again, maybe you can relate. I'll let you answer for yourself. But what really that really brings up for me is that what I feel is that I'm learning so much about creation in simpler and simpler forms, and every step along the way, it totally is an exploration. There's times where I feel like I'm really understanding it. And again, like I'll see things like the vanilla ice cream, like, oh, I'm really getting it. And then there'll be other moments where I totally catch myself in an old pattern and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being so restrictive. I'm being so insistent. I'm being so impatient. And then
Yes.
it's like, well, that's exploration too. It's like you see how you feel when you start to get really impatient and insistent. And you're like, ooh, I don't think I like that I'm being really insistent right now, not in a judgmental way, but it feels like I'm closing myself off, even just to the moment, not necessarily the manifestation, whatever I think I'm trying to attract. More so, it closes me off to feeling good in the moment.
Exactly.
When it's like having a sense of like neediness, I need it to happen this way, I need this, I need that, or like why hasn't it happened yet? Like anything like that, what I notice is that it actually takes me into a frequency where I'm not enjoying my life in the moment because I'm in some kind of, and it's not wrong. It's just that it's exploration. I find myself in an energy where I start to feel kind of like off or, just frustrated, whatever it is. And it's through that again, through the exploration that I can be like, oh, okay, I seem to have frustrated myself. Okay, well, where do I want to go from here? Because the frustration isn't feeling that great. Again,
Yeah.
it's not wrong, it's not bad, but it's just not feeling great. So where do I want to go from here? Oh, from here, I just want to enjoy the moment. So like, how can I allow myself back into the moment? And then, like you said, that just feels better to be back in the moment. So thank you so much for speaking to like, it's not about perfection, because for so many of us, I feel that we knew a lot of the ways that we were exposed to in more of like a collective sense or a societal sense or just like the social norms. We knew all of that, and now we're coming into it, what to me feels like this really open expanse of like, oh, okay, it's so much more, it's a lot simpler, it's much easier, and it feels great to open up to that. And it's still a learning process, and sometimes for me it feels like I'm really getting it, other times it feels like, oh, I'm back in some kind of limiting way of being. And so yeah, just the grace, the removing judgment, and just being a little bit like, okay, it's a game that I'm learning, and I'm learning all the time. So like, yeah, let go of the perfection. I love that. Thank you for bringing that, because it does, even that feels like open and light, like don't make it about being perfect.
It's an analogy I used last week with a client who was very scientific. Is I allowed him to imagine that he was in an experiment. He was doing an experiment, and no experiment, well, very few experiments have the exact perfect desired result the very first trial. But you also don't beat yourself up if trial number 1 doesn't show you what you want. You say, okay, trial number 2, trial number 3, and you just keep seeing what happens. So when we realize that in some ways life is just an experiment, we're just here to see what happens. What happens if I do this? How about that? How about this? How about that? Great.
Hmm.
Great.
Yeah,
Keep
to
going.
me,
Keep trying. More
yeah.
trials.
Yeah, it reminds me of gardening. I played a couple years back with gardening with like pots, and oh my gosh, like there's so many things that you're like, oh, that's not the way I thought it
Yep.
was gonna go. But again, like gardening feels very simple, so it's like, um, there wasn't all of this like judgment. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know it worked like that. Okay, the plants didn't really thrive that way. So then it's like, okay, well, how can I tweak it? How can I tweak it? How can I tweak it? And so what I'm hearing is like, yeah, can we let it all be that experimentation? Like I'm learning, I'm playing, like there's things I don't know. And as I go, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know, now I can tweak, and we're just seeing what happens as we go along, as we learn, as we tweak. So I love that. That feels very simple. Yeah. Well, again, this has been fantastic. So loved your sentiments, your wisdom here towards the end. And if people have been listening and they just love to learn more about you, learn more about your coaching, what's the easiest way to connect with you beyond this interview?
Yeah, I love to connect with people, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all those good social media type platforms. I have a link tree. So if you know how to find link tree, I think we discussed this, there's a dot in there somewhere, I think after the R for tree, and it's just my name, Sheila Williams. And my website is sheilawilliamscoaching.com. So love if anybody wanted to connect with me and explore maybe working together, or just, follow me on Instagram or Facebook. And I have a group starting soon. So that link will be put in the link tree, and that'll have free offerings and trainings or workshops or whatever fun. I like to play. So whenever it feels good, I'm happy to either just jump on a video or create a call and play and lead some exercises or activities or meditations or whatever. And so there's access to something for everyone.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure those links are in the show notes. And yeah, so you've heard it. If you've been feeling what Sheila brings to the table, the energy, the insights, the wisdom, and would like to connect further, you'll have some options in the show notes. So yeah, I feel like I don't know how you feel, but I feel like we could keep talking for the next 8 hours.
Yeah, there's so many fun things that we haven't talked about. So that'll just be a conversation for us next time, I guess. But yeah, it's beautiful to connect with you and to have the chance to have a great conversation. And as I said, what I love exploration and I love connection. And when I have the opportunity to do that, it feels good. So thank you for having the time to play with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I do get a sense I'll be doing this for some time. I mean, I won't go into full details, but my dreams there's been a lot more clarity about some big dreams, even what this conversation is a part of. And so I have a sense that there'll definitely be more opportunities down the road. So I'd love to have you back.
I feel like you just let me know.
What's that?
I said, you let me know. I don't know where in the world I'll be or what time zone, but I can always make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be lovely to have another one. So thank you so much. Thanks for letting us, just sharing your insights about traveling and just all the insights from your life experience. It's been a pleasure. I guess we'll see what unfolds from here.
Perfect. As it should be. We'll be light and easy about it. We just know that there's more good and fun to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much to everyone who has listened. And at some point in the future, you may be watching this on one social media platform or another. The video version may in fact make it out into the world at a later date. So whether you've listened now or you watch later, thank you so much. If you are enjoying this podcast and you want to support it, there's a few ways you can do that. You can always get a link from whatever platform you're listening to it on and share the link. If you ever leave a heartfelt review, that always tells the podcast platforms that you're enjoying this, which as far as I know, kind of boosts it up in the search and the rankings. So if you feel that this information is important, if you found value from it, just know there are ways that you can support and share it. So, and just thank you for listening. I really appreciate each listen and each listener. So thank you so much. This has been another episode of the Restore Yourself podcast.